Okay, so on this top 15 video, I'm going to be covering a topic that I haven't really talked about before on this channel, and that is Half-Life. And particularly, I'm going to be talking about my 15 favorite Half-Life 2 levels. Now, or levels, chapters, whatever. There was a little bit of fudging I had to do to get it up to 15, which I'll talk about as I go through the list. But I'll just start it off with number 15, which is just the end credits. Okay, there was no way that I could make this so that it would be 15 actual levels and chapters. I just had to include the end credits as a whole thing, and obviously that has to be number 15 because it's not actually, you're not actually playing it, you're just watching it, and who honestly sits through the whole end credits. And it also was just like a reminder that the story is ending and, you're not getting a Half-Life 3. But moving on to number 14, which is Root Canal, which this level is honestly, it just kind of feels like some weird little filler level almost, where you're not really out of tutorial mode just quite yet. The game still thinks you should be learning how to play almost, I don't know. Just kind of a weird in-between level. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not very memorable, I suppose. I can never really remember where this level begins, where this level ends exactly, as much as I do with other levels that are much more distinct from each other. It's still a good level. I do like to see kind of the underworld of City 17, so to speak. But number 13 is Sand Traps, and this is a fun level. You play it for the first time, you do the picking up stuff with the gravity gun, putting it down, stepping on there. But honestly, after you've played it for a couple times, if you're on your like 5th or 6th playthrough, you just sprint through the Sand Traps level and get it over with. I mean, it'll take you like 2 minutes to play the whole level if you just run through it. You might have some antlions chasing you, but not that many will spawn at one point. So, it's something you deal with. You sprint for a couple minutes, get to safety, deal with whatever antlions you got following you, and then you move on to the next level. And I guess it's just that playability that's kind of been crippled because there's not much to see or do besides just the mechanics that they're wanting you to do, which you don't have to do. So that's kind of why it's kind of low on my list. Number 12 is Follow Freeman. I feel like this level is maybe a little bit too long, or they got too much going on. I mean, it just seems like a lot happens in this level. Maybe I'm putting some stuff with this level in Anti-Citizen one, but it's like there's a whole thing with the Striders, and you're in some underground bunker, and then you got going from bunker to bunker. Then there's the Capitol building or whatever. You got some giant gun you gotta turn off. It just seems like there's a lot in this level, and it gets a little tedious at some point. But it is nice to see, to see this whole fighting back, so to speak, of the Resistance, and you're revisiting some levels of City 17, and just with a new twist on it, buildings are destroyed and things are on fire, and it's pretty cool to see. Number 11 is Our Benefactors, which this is also kind of like Sand Traps, just talking about playability, not playability, but about replayability. Because honestly, after you've played this a couple times, the whole scene when you're strapped to the pod and you can't move and you're just looking at scenery while you're being taken through this building, that can go on for a little bit too long after you've played the game multiple times. And it's cool to see the first time as you go up higher and higher and higher, and you start looking off in the distance just how high up this massively tall building is. But for a while it gets a little tedious. I also feel like you get the super gravity gun a little bit too early in this level. I think maybe they could have saved that for a little later, because it's just this you really end up doing the same stuff with the super gravity gun over and over again, and I don't know. And then number 10 is Water Hazard. This is a good level too, but I guess the problem with this is the things you're doing in the level, they kind of lack a little bit of diversity. It just kind of feels like the same thing over and over again. You're really spending the whole level going from location to location with hunter chopper thing on your back. It is a nice change up when you finally get the gun, and so you can start going on the offensive a little bit. But there's just not much variety. I don't know. And then number 9 is a Red Letter Day. This is another one of those like dialogue heavy, cutscene levels almost, and you're still kind of in tutorial mode, which I mentioned. You do get a considerable amount of backstory and world building in this, but it's just not as good as earlier chapters, and it is just kind of moving you along. So I don't know. It's not bad. It's just pretty simple, pretty basic. Number 8. Number 8. Number 8 is Dark Energy. This is the final chapter of the game, the real final chapter of the game. You don't count the end credits. Dark Energy, I guess it kind of suffers from the problem of our benefactors, which you get the super gravity gun too early, and you're just doing the same things over and over again. You're picking people up, you're chucking them things, you're picking up those little consoles and chucking those. You got the floating ball things, energy balls. You got to pick them up and shoot them someplace to get something started, or take them out to turn down some shield. You're just kind of doing the same things over and over again, and with multiple playthroughs, it gets kind of tedious. But it is a nice, exciting ending, and the final boss, so to speak, thing with Breen. And the way it ends, specifically, that cliffhanger ending, you got the G-Man coming back again with another good speech. So it is good, but it's just, not my favorite. Number 8 is still a pretty good position to be on this list. Number 7 is Nova Prospect. Now this is good. I really like kind of the transitional, because something I notice about these is kind of the transitional periods between episodes or chapters can seem kind of weird a little bit. But this is good. It's got like the D-Day beach storming a little bit once you finally got the Antlions on your side, and they got bunkers set up and you're going from bunker to bunker, and the actual prison itself is really neat. A lot of close quarters battles, that's really good. You get the whole turret thing where you set up turrets and reprogram them to fight enemies, so that's really cool. I always liked the whole the whole scene or whatever when you're in a cell block and they're coming at you from multiple angles, and you gotta set up turrets in different locations, kind of like keep an eye on the turrets, and fight the Combine from multiple angles. What I would always do is I would always like drag turrets with me, so that when I got to that part, I would have an extra turret, and then I would know what not to do to not trigger a Combine from spawning. So I would like pile stuff up to block exits, so I could have more control over where they would come. But it is a very fun level, and a lot of good uses of, it's a very shotgun heavy level, something you're going to want to use a lot of close quarters battle. Now this is one of the things where I fudged a little bit to get it up to 14, because I'm not sure how it works, but like Nova Prospect and Entanglement are kind of like basically the same thing. It's like 9A and 9B. I never really understood that, but I'm putting them as two separate things, so just so I could get up to 15. and they are different levels. I do think of them as very different levels, even though there is a very kind of seamless transition between Nova Prospekt and Entanglement. Number 6 is Black Mesa East. I feel like this is another really good level. It's another one of those cutscene, dialogue heavy levels, but there's considerably more backstory and world building and expositional dialogue going on there, and it's a nice good rest after all the stuff with Water Hazard. I feel like they handled the transition between Water Hazard and Black Mesa East really well, because by the time you reach Black Mesa East, it feels like a much deserved rest from all that helicopter crap that's been going on for the previous episode. So that was really good. And then there is the introduction of the gravity gun, which changes the game going forward a lot, so that's really fun. Next, number 5 is Anti-Citizen 1. This is fun. Again, you're exploring the so-called ruins of City 17. I like what they did with the slow teleporter being like 2 weeks later. I feel like that's a good way to have time pass without having a cutscene or fading away, to not break the first person nature of it. It's nice to see the Resistance finally coming together a little bit more, putting up a fight really. And obviously the whole team element of it, where you're calling people and you can tell them to go and stay, but that can get kind of annoying when they get in your way, but it's fun. Again, this level really blends into Follow Freeman for me. They just kind of blend together. I'm not exactly sure what's what. I guess I really like the beginning of Anti-Citizen 1 a lot, so I guess that brings it together for me. Number 4 is Point Insursion. It's obviously, this is one of the most iconic levels of Half-Life 2. This is the thing that starts it all. Great speech by the G-Man in the beginning. You got the train. It's just real memorable stuff, and it's honestly probably the level that I've played the most of, I would suppose, in Half-Life 2, because whenever I start a playthrough of Half-Life 2, I might not always finish it, so I might stop at some random point, but I'll always start with Point Insursion. And it's nice to kind of just be thrust into this world. You're not really sure what's going on, where you are, what's happening, what you're supposed to do. You're just kind of doing stuff. You're just wandering around, and then Barney comes and pushes you along on the path, so that's nice. Number 3 is Highway 17. Now, this is somewhat similar to Root Canal. I mean, this is somewhat similar to Water Hazard, where Highway 17, you're in the Jeep the whole time, and Water Hazard. I was right the first time. I thought I made a mistake again. And in Water Hazard, you're in the airboat the whole time. But I feel like with Highway 17, just the things you're doing in this level are much more diverse than the things you're doing in Water Hazard. Obviously, you got the 3 big points. Shore Point something. I feel like there's a third word that I'm not remembering. Shore Point. That's with the crane. And, again, the Jeep, Dr. Freeman. You can hear that over and over again. And then there is New Little Odessa, which you get the RPG. And then there is Lighthouse Point. And then there's the stuff in between. Those houses you can visit and get supplies. There's the bridge, which the bridge stuff is cool. Kind of like tightrope walking across the bottom of that bridge is really neat. Honestly, it's just a fun level. It feels, I can definitely see how this is inspired by the stuff that ends up in Half-Life 2 Episode 2, where it starts getting a little bit more open world feeling, kind of. with the whole White Forest stuff, so that's neat. But moving on to number 2, this is We Don't Go to Ravenholm. Obviously, one of the most popular levels of Half-Life, the whole zombie element, and this level is where the physics engine really gets to shine the most, even more than Dark Energy and Our Benefactors, which is completely just a physics engine game. With Ravenholm, it kind of almost feels like a different game. They changed this stuff up so much more. You know, you're relying on the gravity gun. Ammo is so scarce, you gotta kind of conserve it. You got the traps you gotta utilize, and you know the environment. I think it's the only nighttime level, or I guess the end it sort of becomes nighttime almost. But you know the whole atmosphere of it. You're alone. You don't really have like anyone to guide you or help you along. You're just kind of hoping you're going in the right direction. So it's definitely a cool level. It's a lot of fun. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's number 2. I mean, I can't think of any reason, I can think of anything wrong with the level itself. But I'll move on to my number 1, and that is the level Entanglement. And again, I know I fudged it a little bit. This is like Nova Prospect Part 2. It's some weird 9A, 9B thing. I don't understand it. But anyway, Entanglement is my favorite episode. Not my favorite episode, my favorite chapter of Half-Life 2. I guess I can't use episodes, because there's episode 1 and there's episode 2. But Entanglement is my favorite chapter, my favorite level. And I guess the main reason I like this is just because how it ends. Like, when it ends, the whole thing is just kind of like falling. It's just like collapsing within you. You know, like you're being swarmed in, things are exploding around you. It's just a really cool ending. And plus, Entanglement is really like the tonal shift of the game, kind of. This is where you really start to just fight back, almost, because I guess you can see it because, like, I'm not conveying this that good, but before this point, throughout most of the game, you're kind of on the defensive. You know, you're running away, picking them off, you know, hiding. You know, a lot of times you got a helicopter or whoever just shooting down at you. You gotta avoid it. You know, even with sand traps, you're kind of trying to avoid the antilimes as much as possible. But entrapment is really the point where it feels like the tides are starting to turn in your favor a little bit more. And I guess you can see that because the Combine are starting to take you a little bit more seriously. I think this is the level too where Dr. Breen starts calling you out in his little Breencasts, or well, he's calling the Combine out. He's like, why don't you just kill this guy? This is some like physicist with the crowbar. Why is he giving you this much grief? What are you guys doing? I always liked that, and it's fun. It's a really fun level. You know, I love the way it ends. That's almost like a cliffhanger ending, and you can really tell that you're really starting to put a dent into this Combine here because they're really going at you full force. I mean, when it reaches that end, there's just like a storm of people coming through, and you know you utilize those reprogrammed turrets a lot, and there's a lot of tension with starting up the teleporter. That slow thing, you're just kind of waiting. It's very tense. You get the reveal of Dr. Mossman being a traitor. Spoiler alert for this 12-year-old game. But yeah, it's a really fun level. I like it a lot. It's definitely my favorite, so there's that. And a long video. But yeah, that's my list. Top 15 favorite Half-Life 2 levels, and I will see you guys next time.